autism community and different preferences of labeling and identity, my official diagnosis at the age of 6 is Asperger syndrome. I understand that this language has changed, but for me, I might still refer to myself as Asperger's, Aspie, or my personal preference of neurodiverse or neurodivergent. So understanding of autism as a spectrum is important to understand, but I also understand that each person may have their own personal preference. But in this segment, I will use terms that reflect my preference. I'm often asked what advice I would give to others that are in my position or share my label. Today I'm giving tips for transitioning into college. Transitioning into a new chapter of your life is hard for anyone. Everyone gets comfortable where they are, and some of us on the spectrum have a harder time moving on than others. Those on the autism spectrum may have a harder time transitioning into this new chapter of life we call college. These are just a few tips that help me make this new chapter into my life so much more enjoyable. Going to college is the first time many are going without resources such as an IEP or a 504. While many colleges and universities claim to have a disability service, these were very hard for me to access. To quote autism advocate Laura Nadine, they saw me as too able to be disabled, but too disabled to be considered abled. Autism is often referred to as the invisible disability because there are not always visible signs that a person needs help or resources. After many attempts to get resources through the disability services at 2 different universities, for me, I had to give up. Trying to get these services was more stressful than trying to manage the actual coursework itself. So for tip number 1, I highly recommend dual enrollment. I was a part of the dual enrollment program. I took speech, English 1, English 2, and math at the local community college, and it counted toward my high school diploma as well. My mom and I chose these classes because no matter what school I would choose to go to, these classes would transfer as foundations. I was never on my high school campus in the morning. I ended up missing a lot of senior activities because of it. I was never in time for homeroom during announcements. But I didn't mind that too much. I didn't really have that many connections with my class and was counting down the days till I would never see most of them again. Dual enrollment was a great tool to help me transition to college. I was able to get used to professors, their expectations, and how to balance my time. I was able to adjust to the academic rigor of college without having to adjust to the social change simultaneously. I think it made the transition to college so much easier. This also helps with the Aspie mindset of not doing classes twice. After high school, many of the first 2 years of college are repeats, and dual enrollment helps with that. Take the class once, get twice the credit, worth your time and investment. Tip number 2 is to know the school that will best suit you. When applying to colleges, I knew I wanted a small Christian school. I knew I needed a small campus where I would not be overwhelmed by the size of the student population. I kind of wanted a college about the same size of my high school. I also knew I wanted a Christian school. I was tired of being surrounded by non-believers who constantly told me I was wrong, belittled me, or my ideas, or my contributions in class. Where's the tolerance, right? I wanted a positive and uplifting environment. I also wanted a school that was close enough to home where I could come visit on the weekends, but not close enough to where I was not independent. I was hoping for about an hour or 2 drive. From 4th grade to 11th grade, my heart was set on a specific large Christian school in Florida. Then I toured some campuses based on my needs and narrowed my choices down between Shorter University, Toccoa Falls College, and Southeastern University. Touring the campuses was super helpful. I was able to visualize the campus and start learning where things were, if transportation would be an issue, the dorm size, the cafeteria food, and all the other important things that go into choosing a college. I ended up choosing Shorter as my new home. I was so excited because one of my friends from high school was also going to the same school. But on the campus tour, I asked questions to the tour leader that were relevant to me and often went back for a private tour to make sure I could see what I wanted to see and ask what needed to be addressed before I made my choice. Step 3 is to get plugged into the community. After I made my deposit to my school, my mom and I started to look for churches in the area, or church shopping, as we called it. We both knew I would not be home every weekend to go to church, and I needed a new church home. My mom asked me what I was looking for a church. I knew I wanted a smaller church and one that focused on missions. like our church back home had been doing. We found 2 churches in the area within our denomination. My mom messaged one of them and they almost responded immediately. We both had all of our questions answered, and we decided when I went up for orientation to tour, we would see the church a little while afterwards. The lead pastor welcomed us and gave us a tour of the church. He introduced us to the rest of the staff. He gave us a brief but very informative overview of the church and what they believed. It also turns out he was the one messaging us on Facebook the entire time. I felt right at home at this church without even attending a service. Finding a new home before classes started made my mom feel so much better knowing that I was in a good church, and it made me so much less nervous. I was scared to find a new church by myself, and I didn't want to spend the first few Sundays aimlessly church hopping. I wanted to be plugged in as soon as possible. I became a member of my new church as soon as I could. This church has been such a huge support for me while I've been in college, and I'm so glad I found it there before school started. Some of you may not attend church, so find a community of support at your school. For me, the church community is vital, and being intentional about it was important for my transition to school. Tip number 4 is to practice the drive. Now this might sound a little silly, but I spent a lot of time practicing the drive to and from school, navigating the interstate, and navigating the route. My dad and I wanted to feel more comfortable about me driving on the interstate, especially since I had never done it before. I was so anxious about missing my exits, turning the wrong way. I wanted to have the travel path partly memorized. I hated using my GPS because it would fall off its little stand or mute itself randomly. I was so terrified of getting lost. My dad did practice drives with me so we could both learn the route to and from school. We didn't do this a lot, but enough to where I felt more comfortable driving to and from school without feeling like I was going to die every time I left my house. Very important. Step 5 is to start prepping for the move sooner rather than later. Something else that I found to help ease my anxiety about college was to ask for my new dorm supplies for Christmas. I went to Bed Bath & Beyond and made an item registry. When Christmas time came around, I asked my family if they would get me an item for my college registry instead of a regular gift. This made me feel so much better about college. I didn't want to get all this stuff at the last minute. This helped me to start and recognize that a transition was happening. The idea of going to college was starting to sink in and make it even more real. I am visual, so having this stuff helped me check off a list, which eased my anxiety. It also helped me visualize my new room. I also had to start to learn how to do my own laundry and how to make some basic food when the cafeteria was closed. My parents helped me learn these new skills my senior year and the summer before. That way I could help build my confidence and become more independent, which is what I wanted when I went to school. So the main takeaway is to look at all the steps of transition. Break it down into steps so you don't get overwhelmed. Start prepping your last few years of high school. Make sure you choose a school that's right for you, not where everyone else is going. Ask for help and don't be stubborn about it. Be intentional, find a community, and plan for success. When you don't know what to do, look for resources to help you. Don't quit on yourself. From one Aspie to another, you got this.